The rain poured hard on Bay Ridge that night, but Officer Daniel Rourke barely noticed. Kneeling on the cracked floor of an abandoned duplex, flashlight trembling in his hand, he stared at two children curled together on a bare mattress. The older boy didn't speak. The baby wheezed, and the dog, muddy, trembling, refused to leave their side. Daniel whispered, almost to himself, "Why didn't anyone see this sooner?" It had started like any other shift. Quiet streets, tired feet, and the weight of routine pressing down. Officer Daniel Rourke just wanted to clock out, grab takeout, and forget the world existed. Then came the sound of soft paws behind him. He turned. A stray pup, soaked and shivering, followed his every step like a shadow with a mission. Daniel tried to shoo it away, twice, but it didn't budge. He didn't know then that the dog was trying to lead him somewhere, that a child had risked everything by tying a crumpled note to its collar, that a baby's life depended on that message, and that this relentless, mud-covered puppy would drag him into a story he never saw coming. This isn't just a story about rescue, it's about how three broken souls and one determined dog found in each other what the world had denied them: a reason to stay. Officer Daniel Rourke's boots hit the wet pavement of Maple Avenue with a dull rhythm. His shift had run long, again, and his back ached from 12 hours of bad posture and worse calls. Bay Ridge was quiet this time of night, the kind of stillness that felt both peaceful and uneasy. The streetlights flickered against puddles, casting long, distorted shadows as he walked toward his car. Behind him, footsteps, light, irregular, too soft for a person. He turned. A stray dog stood a few feet back. Small, scruffy, and drenched from the rain, it blinked up at him with eyes far too alert for a creature that should have given up. "Go on," Daniel muttered. "Shoo." The dog tilted its head but didn't move. Daniel sighed and kept walking. A few seconds later, soft splashes again. He turned. Still there. "Seriously?" He half laughed, half growled. "I don't have food or patience." The pup wagged its tail once, then trotted closer. Daniel stopped. "You're persistent, I'll give you that." He crouched a little, squinting at the dog's collar, if you could call it that. It was more of a knotted strip of leather, waterlogged and half-torn, but something was tucked under it. Daniel hesitated. Instinct kicked in. Assess, don't assume. He slowly reached for the collar. The dog flinched but didn't run. His fingers found paper, wet, crumpled, and shaking in his hand. He unfolded it. The words were written in a child's scrawl, uneven and pressed hard into the paper. "Help, baby sick. No food. 117 Rayner Street." Daniel stared at the address. Rayner Street, a cluster of aging duplexes near the edge of town, foreclosure zone. He looked at the dog, now sitting, tail wagging faintly, as if waiting for an answer. "You've got to be kidding me," he whispered. He turned back toward his car, but the dog took off, trotting ahead, then stopping to glance back. Daniel looked once more at the note, then at the street, and made a decision without fully realizing it. He started walking after the dog. Before the divorce, Daniel used to talk about buying a cabin somewhere inland, maybe up north. A place with pine trees and silence, far from sirens and broken homes. His ex-wife had laughed the idea off. He was always too responsible to walk away. She was right. Even now, after the paperwork, the moved-out boxes, and his daughter's unread texts, he was still on these streets, still showing up. But lately, he wasn't sure why. He hadn't saved anyone in a long time. Not really. And yet here he was, following a stray dog down dark alleys and broken sidewalks toward some long-forgotten corner of Bay Ridge. His patrol car sat 3 blocks away, but the dog refused to wait. Daniel jogged to keep up. They turned down Rayner Street. The homes here had lost their color. Boards covered windows, vines crept up cracked walls, and the occasional porch light flickered like a dying heartbeat. The dog stopped in front of a duplex, with the number 117 spray-painted in faded black above the doorframe. It pawed the door. Daniel approached, his boots sloshing in shallow puddles. The door was half shut, swollen from moisture. One push opened it. The smell hit him first. Mildew, spoiled food, and something heavier. Something human. "Hello?" he called. No response. Hand on his flashlight, other on his holstered weapon, he stepped inside. The dog slipped past him, tail high, ears perked. The living room was stripped bare. Torn blankets, an empty baby bottle, cracked tiles underfoot, and then a sound, a soft cough, barely audible. He followed it to the back room. There, in the corner, was a stained mattress. On it, a boy, no more than 9, holding a baby to his chest. His clothes hung off him. His eyes, wide, dark, unblinking, were locked on Daniel like a cornered animal. The baby wheezed faintly. Fever flushed its tiny face. The boy clutched tighter. Daniel froze. He crouched, voice low. "Hey, I'm Daniel. I'm here to help." The boy didn't speak, didn't blink. The dog trotted to his side and curled beside them like it had always belonged there. Daniel's chest tightened. He pulled out his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Rourke. I need an ambulance at 117 Rayner Street, 2 minors, 1 infant, possible dehydration and fever. Copy? Static." Then, "Copy that. Units en route." As he waited, he spotted something on the floor, another note crumpled and stained. "No money. We'll find help. Be strong." Daniel's throat clenched. This wasn't temporary. They'd been left. The sirens took 11 minutes to arrive. In those 11 minutes, Daniel paced the cracked linoleum, fighting the urge to punch the nearest wall. The boy hadn't moved an inch. His arms were locked around the baby. Liam, Daniel would later learn, and the dog stayed glued to his side like a soldier on duty. The baby's breathing was shallow, interrupted by dry, rattling gasps. Daniel had seen overdose victims breathe like that. He hated how familiar it was. He tried again. "What's your name, buddy?" Nothing. Just wide, hollow eyes and a grip that refused to loosen. The place was worse than he thought. A pot of something unrecognizable sat rotting in the sink. The fridge door hung open, shelves empty, no electricity, no diapers, not even a pillow under their heads, just the mattress, soaked through in spots Daniel didn't want to think about, and still no parents. He walked to the living room and opened the second note again, smoothing it out on his thigh. "No money. We'll find help. Be strong." There was no return address, no apology. Just a command from ghosts who had walked out without a plan, leaving 2 kids and a dog to survive however they could. The ambulance lights finally splashed through the windows. Daniel rushed to the door, waved them in. EMTs flooded the hallway with urgent steps and clipped voices. He tried to step back and let them work, but the boy wouldn't release Liam. "Sir?" one paramedic said. "We need to get the baby now." Daniel crouched again beside the boy. "They're going to help your brother, okay? I promise they're not taking him away." The dog let out a low whine. The boy's lip trembled, then slowly, agonizingly, he lifted the baby, hands trembling, and passed him to Daniel. Liam's body was hot, too hot. Daniel didn't even notice he was crying until his vision blurred. "Dehydrated," the EMT muttered, laying Liam on the stretcher. "Severe. Could be renal failure. We need to go. Now." Daniel stood to follow them out, but the boy suddenly lunged and grabbed the hem of his uniform. Tiny fingers clenched like they were made of wire. "I'll stay with you," Daniel said immediately. "You hear me? I'm not leaving." The boy didn't answer, but he didn't let go either. Scout, the dog, trotted beside them as they moved down the front steps into the pouring rain. Inside the ambulance, Daniel held the boy close, while the EMTs worked on Liam. The child clutched his coat sleeve like it was the only thing anchoring him to the earth. The lights inside flickered against his bruised skin, his cracked lips, his too thin arm. Halfway to the hospital, the boy finally spoke, barely a whisper. Is he dying?" Daniel hesitated, then shook his head. "He's fighting, and we're going to help him win." The boy nodded once, as if any more motion might shatter him. At Bay Ridge General, they were met by pediatric trauma staff. Liam disappeared through double doors, swallowed by medical urgency. Daniel and the boy were left in the hallway, soaked and shivering. The dog leaned against the child's leg, silent, vigilant. Two women approached, badges clipped to their shirts, social workers. "I'm Rachel Monroe," the older one said gently, "and this is Evelyn. We'll need to talk to you both." The boy flinched, pressed closer to Daniel. Rachel softened. "You're safe now. We just want to understand what happened." The boy didn't respond. The dog growled low, stepping between them. Rachel exchanged a look with Evelyn. "We'll give you a moment." After they left, Daniel sat down beside the boy on the cold bench. He'd noticed how the child's hand hadn't left his sleeve once since the ambulance. "You hungry?" he asked. A tiny nod. Daniel dug through his jacket, pulling out the only thing he had, a crushed granola bar. The boy devoured it like it was a full-course meal, crumbs sticking to his cheeks. Daniel leaned back, heart pounding with something deeper than exhaustion. He had seen trauma, but never like this. And now, somehow, it was his. The waiting room was far too bright. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting pale shadows on linoleum floors. Daniel sat on a plastic chair that creaked with every shift of his weight, his uniform still damp, the chill of it clinging to his back. Beside him, the boy curled up small, eyes fixed on the hallway where Liam had vanished. The dog, now asleep, rested its chin on the boy's sneakers. Every few minutes, the child's fingers reflexively tightened around Daniel's jacket sleeve, as if expecting someone to rip him away. Daniel didn't move. Rachel Monroe sat across from them, scribbling notes on a clipboard, occasionally glancing up. She hadn't said anything about shelters yet, not out loud, but Daniel had heard the term emergency placement over the EMT's radio. He knew what came next: temporary housing, paperwork, separation, another system, another stranger. The boy wouldn't survive that, and neither, Daniel realized, would he. He looked down at the kid, so small, so alert under layers of grime and fear, and something inside him shifted. Not like a light switch flipping, more like a slow unwinding of rope that had been tied too tight for too long. He didn't even know the boy's name yet, but somehow that didn't matter. What mattered was that this kid had walked through hell carrying a baby and a note. What mattered was that a dog had done more for these children than any adult in their lives. Daniel swallowed hard. "I'm not going anywhere," he said, not expecting a response. But the boy's eyes flicked up just for a second, and Daniel caught the briefest glimpse of something beneath the trauma. A question. A sliver of hope. Daniel leaned forward, elbows on his knees, voice low. "You hear me? I stay." The boy didn't speak, but he didn't let go of Daniel's sleeve either, and that, somehow, was louder than words. The hospital released Liam 3 days later. His fever had broken, but he was still weak. Small limbs barely moving, eyes dull with exhaustion. Daniel carried him to the car in a borrowed car seat from the pediatric wing, while the boy, still silent, walked beside him, holding tightly to Scout's leash. The dog hadn't left his side since that night. Daniel had spent the previous days preparing, buying diapers, baby formula, second-hand clothes. He'd cleared out his spare bedroom, shoved his tools into the garage, and set up 2 small beds with mismatched blankets. One of them had little rockets. He didn't know if the boy liked space, but it felt hopeful. Back at home, the boy stood in the doorway, frozen. Daniel crouched beside him. "This is your place now. You don't have to ask to open the fridge. You don't have to ask for anything." The boy nodded, almost imperceptibly, and stepped inside. Liam was already asleep in his arms. Daniel placed the baby gently in the crib he'd assembled at 2 a.m. that morning. He stood there a long while, just watching his chest rise and fall. Later, in the kitchen, he made pancakes. He wasn't a cook, more of a cereal and coffee kind of guy, but he wanted the house to smell warm, like something permanent. The boy sat at the table, stiff as always, eyes on the plate, but not moving. "You can eat," Daniel said softly. Still nothing. Scout placed his paws on the boy's leg and let out a low, encouraging whimper. Slowly, the boy picked up the fork. Daniel didn't speak again. He just watched as the boy took his first bite, then another, then a third. It was the beginning of something. Not trust, Not yet, but maybe the possibility of it. 2 weeks in, Daniel found the boy sleeping on the floor beside Liam's crib. Again, there were 2 beds in the room. Clean sheets, a rocket-shaped nightlight, stuffed animals that Daniel had picked out with help from a tired store clerk. But every night, the boy curled up on the rug with Scout pressed against his back, still in defense mode, still ready to run. Daniel brought him a blanket without saying a word. During the day, the boy followed Daniel everywhere, but still hadn't spoken a full sentence. He flinched at sudden sounds, hoarded crackers in a shoebox, and stiffened every time the doorbell rang. Rachel stopped by weekly to check in. She was kind but firm. "Daniel, you're doing good work, but we need to start the guardianship process officially. Temporary placement only lasts so long." He nodded, but inside, fear stirred. Was he enough? Could he really be what these boys needed? He hadn't spoken to his own daughter in 8 months. One afternoon, after a call about a stolen car, Daniel came home to find the boy in the hallway, frozen. Scout barked softly beside him. The baby monitor crackled from the living room. Daniel knelt. "What's wrong?" The boy looked at him, chest heaving, eyes wide. "I thought you weren't coming back," he whispered. Daniel's heart cracked right there. He pulled the boy close, hand on his back. "I'll always come back." The boy didn't respond. But that night, for the first time, he slept in the bed. Scout curled up on the floor like a sentinel. It happened on a Thursday. Daniel had just come off a night shift when Rachel called. Her voice was measured, but he caught the undertone. "There's been movement in the case," she said. "A family in the next county offered to foster Mason and Liam. Permanently." Daniel stood still in the middle of his kitchen, the baby bottle he'd just prepared cooling in his hand. "It's protocol," Rachel added gently. "They're a registered foster home, stable, trained." He didn't answer. That afternoon, the boy was gone. The back door hung slightly open. Scout's leash was missing. Daniel's heart nearly stopped. He raced through the neighborhood, calling Mason's name, asking neighbors, scanning sidewalks. A knot grew in his chest as every turn revealed nothing. Then, an idea. He jumped into his car and drove straight to 117 Rayner Street. There they were, Mason sitting cross-legged on the cracked steps of the abandoned duplex, Liam in his lap. Scout lay at their feet like a guard. Daniel parked so fast his car skidded. He didn't shout, didn't panic. He walked slowly toward them. Mason looked up, tears streaking his face. "You're sending us away," he said. Not a question, a verdict. Daniel crouched, his voice trembling. "I didn't say yes, but they're coming. I heard you." Daniel looked at Liam, sweating, eyes half closed, and then at Scout, whose tail thumped twice against the step. He took a breath. "You're right. They made an offer, but that's not what I want." Mason stared at him, waiting. "I didn't know how to ask. I've never been someone's dad. Not really. I messed up with my own daughter, but you and Liam, I can't imagine this house without you." The wind blew softly through the broken shutters behind them. Mason didn't blink. "You're not giving us away?" His voice cracked on the last word. Daniel shook his head. "No, I'm fighting for you. If you'll let me." Scout nudged Mason's knee gently. Liam stirred, whimpering. And then Mason did something Daniel would never forget. He stood up, still holding his brother, and stepped forward into Daniel's arms, trembling, thin, still unsure. But he stepped forward and whispered, "Okay, Dad." Daniel's throat closed. He held them both, Liam between them, Scout circling their feet like a joyful blur, and knew in that messy, broken moment that this wasn't a rescue anymore. It was a family. The paperwork took months. Interviews, home inspections, background checks. There were long nights of doubt and early mornings filled with bottles, tantrums, and Scout barking at the mailman like it was a mortal threat. But they made it. Daniel stood in front of the courthouse on a cloudy morning, holding Liam in one arm and a manila envelope in the other. Mason stood beside him, tie crooked, hair combed, shoes too big. Scout sat proudly at their feet, tail wagging like he knew exactly what they'd just done. The judge's stamp made it official. Daniel Rourke was now their legal guardian. He didn't cry until they were back in the car. Mason reached over and touched his hand, the first time he'd initiated contact since that day at the duplex. Liam babbled something that sounded almost like "da da," and Daniel just let it happen. He thought about who he used to be, a man going through the motions, believing he had nothing left to give. But a muddy, trembling dog had led him to a house full of silence, desperation, and 2 children who had every reason to give up on adults forever. Instead, they gave him a second chance. They taught him what family actually meant. Not something you're born into, something you fight for every single day. The journey of Daniel, Mason, Liam, and Scout reminds us that sometimes the most powerful changes in life come from the smallest voices or the softest pause. Maybe you've been through something that made you feel alone, invisible, like nobody was coming. But sometimes someone does come, and sometimes that someone is you. So tell me, have you ever had to become someone's safe place, even when you didn't feel ready? Share your story in the comments. Your words might be exactly what someone else needs to keep going. And if this story touched your heart, leave a like. It helps us keep bringing stories that matter. If you believe in the strength of found families, quiet heroes, and second chances, subscribe to the channel. There's more coming, stories that stay with you long after the screen fades to black.